everybody, welcome back to Let's Do a Thing. Today, we're going to be doing a thing with meat. That's right, we're going to be continuing on with one of our subscribers' requests. Today, we're going to be working on a French dip sandwich. Okay, so we've got our ingredients here. Let's go ahead and go over a few things real quick. We've got 4 cups of no salt beef broth. This is no salt added at all. That's so we can control the salt in this, as we're going to be reducing this down for the au jus. Now, we've also got 1 teaspoon of peppercorns whole, 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. We've got 2 teaspoons of salt. We've got 2 bay leaves, 3 garlic cloves, and 1 large yellow onion. We're just going to cut this up. You do not have to cut these very fine, because we're going to cook this in the oven. These are potent. Woo! As I said before, this was a subscriber request. I'm excited about it. It's going to be fun. So, we've got our onion. Gonna cut off the root end on both of these, and we're going to quarter these. These will break down in the oven. We won't need too much with them. Set those aside. Got our garlic here. We're just going to take it. If you do it that way, your jacket just comes right off here. Ta-da! We're going to switch over to our pot. I'm going to use a cast iron pot. It's going to help us put it in the oven. You'll see. Alright, so we've got my old favorite cast iron enameled Dutch oven here. This is what we're going to use because we're going to cook this in the oven. We're going to sear it first, add everything to it, huck it in the oven for about 2 hours. The oven is currently preheating to about 425. But first, we need to sear this so we can build up some flavor on this cast iron. So, we're going to get it nice and hot. Fire. I've got a little bit of olive oil here. You don't have to use olive oil, you can use whatever you want. This is a cut of arm roast. Now, it's not the best cut for this, but it is a very affordable cut. And since we are going to be slicing this up and dipping it into an au jus, use whatever you can get your paws on. And we want this pretty hot because we're not obviously going to cook this all the way through. We're just getting that Maillard reaction on the outside of the beef. A little bit of fond on the inside of the pot. Alright, let's sear this. Just leave it on this side for a little while, 60 seconds. Then you'll just rotate it. Try to get every side that you can. Again, all that browning, all that Maillard reaction is going to equal flavor in the end. Okay, so now that the fire department has come and left, I've assured them that everything is fine. I'm just cooking away from my stove and don't have a proper vent, so look at that. Woo! Beautiful. So we're just going to set that right back in there, and now we're going to add the rest of these ingredients. First, we're going to start with our stock. I don't know how many times I've said this either. Spend the little extra money on your broth if you can. If you have homemade, even better. That would be great. I picked up these beef bones today from a local grocery store, and this is just going to add an extra bit of depth, and the marrow inside the bones as it slowly cooks out is going to add a bunch of beefy, rich flavor, which, let's be honest, if it's a leaner cut like this, this is definitely going to help. You can pick these up for almost next to nothing. They're pretty cheap. I think these were $4 a pound. So I'm going to add a couple of these bones, and you can see this right in here. This is the marrow, and this is slowly going to cook out as we put it in the oven. We're going to continue adding. We've got our onion that we've quartered up. I'm just going to stick them around the side here. These will literally dissolve almost to nothing by the time this is done cooking. And this is all in building flavor for the au jus that we have, because you want a very flavorful juice. That way when you dip your sandwich in, it's real good. Let's go ahead and add our whole peppercorns here. If you don't have whole peppercorns, just add pepper. We've got our salt here. Just gonna work that in. 2 bay leaves and some Worcestershire sauce. That's gonna add a nice umami flavor as well as a little bit of acidity. So, this is all put together. All we have to do now is cover it, put it in our oven. It's about 400, 425. We're going to leave it in there covered about 2 hours. Okay, so we have let this sit in the oven about 400 to 425, whatever you're comfortable with. This has been in there for about 1.5 hours. If you're going to go with a chuck roast or something that has a little bit more tendons, fat, things like that, connective tissue, you might want to go for a little bit longer. This is a pretty lean cut of meat, so I went for a little less time. As you can see, all of our bones here have rendered out. All the marrow on the inside has come out. We're going to make sure to pull all that out of there. Make sure it gets in our stock, our broth here. And then our piece of meat still has all that beautiful color on it. And let it cool down just a little bit, because if you cut this now, it would just pour its juices out, because when fat, muscles, anything like that tends to cook up, all the fibers tighten up like this. So if you cut into it, all it's doing is continuously trying to constrict and pushes moisture out once you cut those fiber strands. Thus, you get really dry and awful meat. So never cut a piece of meat while it's hot. Always give it about 10 minutes to rest. So, as this is set in the oven and cooked for over an hour and a half, we have this beautiful fond that's built up around the side of the pot here. And all I'm going to do is take a spatula. First I'm going to scrape the bottom. I'm going to move this all around. And I'm going to slowly scrape the sides, getting all of that fond. This is not burnt. This is little bits of the juice that is slowly splashed up on the sides. You can kind of pick it up, rock it to one side, get the moisture. But you can see as it slowly starts to come away, get as much of that as you can, because that is basically what we would call bouillon or condensed broth. So I'm just going to work that out a little bit. I'm not going to try too hard to get it all, otherwise I'd be here for a hot minute. We've got our drippings here. It's cold, it's not cold, it's cool enough that we can touch it. So we're gonna go ahead and pull over our sieve here. Always pour away from you, because, you know, hot liquid. And this is gonna catch all those peppercorns. Every bit of things that we don't want is gonna sit in here. I'm just gonna make sure that we get all the juices out of here. And there's a good bit of fat that collects on top of this. Now, if you have time, you can go ahead and let this settle on top, scoop out the fat, which I'll probably do a little bit of. But I do want some of the fat, because there is a decent amount of beef flavor in that fat. And since we're going to be adding just a little bit of flour to this, it's going to help thicken that up to an au jus. We've got our beef completely drained off our juices here. I went ahead and skimmed about, I'd say about 1/4 cup of the fat off the top. You can leave it if you want, just add more flour, that'll help you build that roux. For me personally, I like a little bit of butter flavor, so I've got a tablespoon of butter I'm going to add to our dish here. I'm going to kick that on, let that butter melt, and if you've seen any of our previous episodes on the bechamel or the velouté, you'll know what we're doing here. I'll link it right up here. You should go watch those videos. There's a lot of good things to learn in there. So we're just going to let this melt. Okay, so our butter is starting to foam. We're going to let it foam just a little bit. We're going to turn down the heat, as we do with the bechamels and the velouté, because essentially that's what this is. All right, the second we started introducing flour, it became not a traditional au jus. A traditional au jus would be just a straight reduction. We would put that in there and we would reduce it till it's the thickness that we want. I tend to think it gives it a little bit too strong of a flavor for the French dips, so I like to make it a little bit thinner, or a little bit less reduced and a little bit thicker with flour. We'll go ahead and add our flour in, and just like the other ones, we'll go ahead and cook this out. It won't take long. Our juice here into our little bit of roux. We'll bring this up to a simmer. A lot of people don't realize this, but the flour and cornstarch, the actual starch itself, has to be brought up to a simmer or a boil for it to actually absorb and take in the juices that are around it. So that's why if you just add flour to something and don't bring it back up to a boil, it will not thicken. You actually have to bring it up to a simmer for it to thicken. And we're just going to make sure this stays stirred, and we're going to reduce this to the thickness that we want. And I'm going to go somewhere in between just a juice consistency and a gravy. Okay, so we've reduced this down beautiful, just gorgeous. Ooh. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull this up. We're gonna pour it into a bowl. That is better than the packet stuff. Okay, so now we're gonna let this rest for a sec while we get our sandwich made. Okay, we're ready for assembly. Now this has been a long time coming. For you, it's been the blink of an eye. And I do recommend you guys try this because it is good. So let's go ahead and cut our beef up. And I like to cut it as thinly as possible, just for sake of shredding and chewability. That's a thing, right? Chewability. But you see I'm slicing this just as thin as possible. Don't try to smush it. Just go back and forth a couple times. That is a nice thickness right there. There we go. Okay, now for real, we're ready to assemble. So we've got our baguettes here. If you don't know how to make a baguette, there's a video for that. That beautiful interior. Nice, got some big holes in it. We're just gonna go ahead and start shingling. Now we don't want to be scared. We want plenty of roast beef on here. And this is primarily your flavor, after all. There's not a lot that goes on to these sandwiches, so we're gonna make sure to add lots of roast beef. All right, I've got provolone cheese that I'm gonna top it with. You don't have to put any cheese. You can also put caramelized onions on it if you'd like. I don't believe that it needs that. I believe that the au jus is more than enough flavor if you make it right. You'll make it right because you watch this episode and you respect the process. If you're here, that means you actually like to cook. If you don't like to cook, then you just like me, which also I'm okay with that. I like you being around for liking me. Very humble. All right, so this is our sandwich right now. I'm gonna pop this under the broiler to melt all this cheese. I'm gonna finish this off with some microgreens, and this is courtesy of our friends at Little Bits of Green. This is a mustard wasabi microgreen. And the reason I like this is because this kind of mustardy flavor cuts through all the richness that's going on here. The au jus, the cheese, the meat, the bread, it just adds a pop of brightness. And these little things pack so much flavor. This is also why you need a sturdy bread too, so it helps hold up. Almost too much meat for this here sandwich. Now we've got our au jus that we can go ahead and pour. You can see the consistency of this. Not super thick, but much more viscous than what you would consider a gravy or anything like that. That's the way I like it. So we'll go ahead and ladle up some of this. And that's au jus and French dip, all rolled up into one. This is, in my opinion, one of the great displays of simple ingredients done correctly. We didn't put anything in there that's groundbreaking or extravagant. It's done right, and with the proper technique and time applied to it, it's a great sandwich. The bread is sturdy, so it soaks up plenty of the au jus. The beef is perfectly thick. There's tons of it stacked on there, so it gives you a lot of filling. And the cheese, provolone, let's be honest, is a great cheese with beef. I don't know what else to say about it other than you all should give it a shot. If you have never tried it before, you can go a lot simpler than this. Explore it, see what you think. I love it personally. I think you'll love it too. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for liking this video and subscribing. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to this channel. It helps us a ton. To all my subscribers, thank you so much for putting your faith in us, watching these videos, and just helping us grow as a channel. It really does help all of us here, and we really do appreciate it. So, thank you so much. Until next time, go do a thing.